Good afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you're listening in to Go Big or Go Home. I'm Old Man Troy, joined by the homeless youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny. Not literally homeless, but your wife has stolen your little pad today, hasn't she?
I was going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. Homeless youngster, just on the street now doing the show. No home whatsoever.
I always got something stupid to say.
I wouldn't say stupid.
Well, I mean, like I said, your wife is working from home due to the corona.
Yes.
And she stole your little pad where you usually do the show, so you're kind of showless home.
Yeah, my little we have a 2-bedroom apartment. We have our little, master bedroom, which is, I think, the same size as the other one. But I have the other one, and it's basically an office, where I do my thing. So, yeah, she's in there because there's a big desk, and, so she's working on the computer and, talking with colleagues, doing meetings, doing a bunch of stuff. So she'd rather be there on an actual desk as opposed to the couch, which makes sense. So
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So she's there for the foreseeable future. But, yeah. So, yeah, I'm not homeless, but I'm doing it from the master bedroom, which I never do shows in this room.
Are you laying down doing this show?
No, I'm sitting. I call it Hiawatha style. It's kind of like legs crossed. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just sitting.
I was going to say, if you were all sprawled out laying on the bed doing the show, that would be like, really, youngster? But we got a really good show today. I mean, you would think, though, with nothing going on in sports, especially in the NCAA, that we would have no Go Big show. But we actually have some really great topics in the first half of the show. And in the second half of the show, unfortunately, due to work, you were unable to sit in with the interview with Jennifer Cobb. But the Gateway for a Cure, she is the founder, and it's actually an interesting conversation I had with her. So after the break, we're gonna air that. And I would stick around, folks, because it deals with Parkinson's disease. She has partnered up and collaborates with the Fox Foundation, Michael J. Fox Foundation, for Parkinson's disease. And I really learned a lot it was about a 30-minute conversation, and I learned a lot. So she'll be coming up after the break. But before that, youngster, we've got sports to talk about. You would think the NCAA was going to fold up, but you and I are going to chat NCAA topics for about 30 minutes. Take it away.
Yeah, mostly football, but we'll start on the basketball front. Troy alluded to it on last week's show, talking about Rick Pitino getting another crack at Iona. And Iona is a D1 college basketball program, and they, I don't remember when it was. I feel like it was almost 5 years ago now when I fell in love with their team and their run. They had one of those senior-laden teams. I believe they play in the MAAC, I believe. Could be wrong, so, at Kid Cunny on Twitter. Feel free. Oh, no. Okay, I was right. Just kidding. But you can still follow me at Kid Cunny on Twitter. I was going to say
you can still bash the youngster, too.
Yeah, yeah.
You can bash the old man, too.
Fun of me. Just not for that. I did get their conference correct. But yeah, Iona a few years ago, I really loved the team they had, kind of one of those senior-laden mid-major teams winning their conference. I thought they'd do a lot of damage in March Madness. I think they lost a very close round one game that year. They were like a 13 or 14 seed, and they ended up losing a close one. But in any case, so Iona is not huge. They can bring in some quality players, and once every so often win their conference tournament, get to March Madness. But, not a special program by any means. But this is as of a day ago. Rick Pitino, over the last 5 days, so now it's 6 days, he's already landed 6 commits at Iona, which goes to show, I think, in college basketball, there are some sports where coaching means a little more than others. You can make the argument that in the NBA, how much does coaching really matter? I don't think you can have a bad head coach and win an NBA title, but you can have a fine one, like just a pedestrian one. And if you've got the most talented team, you're going to be damn good. But in college basketball, if you have a Coach K randomly go to Syracuse Tech all of a sudden will get a bunch of recruits, and they'll be really talented, and they'll be really good. They may not win the title, once every 3 years, but they're still going to be really good. If you take Bill Self and throw him at Iowa Western, he's going to attract recruits because of his past and what he's done. And
so let's get real here, though, youngster. Those names aren't going to those schools because they're set where they're at. Rick Pitino is at Iona for a reason, and that's because he cheated. Right. And none of these major programs wanted that hassle. None of them wanted the media attention. Maybe he made amends, but we talked about Pitino and Louisville on this show at length. And I even shared many of my college coaching experiences about it. That guy knew what was going on. And if he's pulling the rug over Iona's eyes, that's fine. But, everybody deserves a second chance. And I'm not saying this is wrong of Iona. But you bring Rick Pitino into Iona, and then you talk about the commits. Of course, he's when it comes to the coaching aspect, he's awesome at it. Yeah. But you look at the moral and ethical standards that were going on in that Louisville program, and I have to, in my mind, it's just my opinion, I still link that to Rick Pitino as an unethical and unmoral guy. And that's the taste I have in my mouth of Rick Pitino. So, like you, I like Iona as a mid-major, and they've been in the tournament a number of times because they win their conference. It's going to be very hard for me to cheer for Iona knowing Rick Pitino's the coach. Now, again, that's just me. It's my personal opinion. But when it comes to moral and ethics, that sits high with me. And maybe it's my generation, youngster, but it's also showing you in college basketball and in any sport, people are forgiving. People are going to give second chances. That's great. Does he deserve a second chance? Sure. It's just an old man's opinion about Rick Pitino. I'm not a fan. Do I think he deserves a second chance? Sure. That's the other part of my upbringing. People deserve second chances. So he gets it. I'm just not going to cheer for the guy. That is my take on this. I just don't think the major colleges wanted the hassle right now, youngster, and maybe after 4 or 5 years. But Pitino's getting up there in age. So maybe Iona's his last landing spot, but I can't imagine that that's where he wants to end up. I would imagine he's making a play to try and get into big-time college basketball one last run. But I think it'll take a few years, and it'll take him under a microscope recruiting-wise. And I can't imagine now, and this is the other reason, let's say he would have went to, I'll just use Wisconsin, because Wisconsin's my favorite team. If he would have went to Wisconsin, I'm sure the NCAA, and they're not going to tell us, there's probably a special committee just watching Wisconsin recruiting. So there's going to be a special committee watching Iona recruiting and what they're going to have to report to the NCAA, I would imagine is going to be under big scrutiny because of what Pitino did in the past.
Yeah.
And as a big college program, why would you want that? You don't want the NCAA on you.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But, again, for Iona, they went out. They gave the guy a chance. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, that's a terrible move. Why are you doing that? Hey, they did what they did. As a person, I'm just not a fan of it. I'm just not a fan of Rick Pitino because of what he did.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting ethically because I think we all, as sports fans, it is impossible as sports fans to root for a team. If you root for a team, you can root for like some people just love Giannis, and so they are fans of the Bucks, and they'll root for the Bucks because Giannis is on there, and mainly they root for the Bucks because of Giannis. Some people just loved Kobe so much they became Laker fans. Are they real Laker fans? No, they just love Kobe. And once Kobe was retired, it's like, are you a true diehard Laker fan? No, not really. Move on to the next team, move on to the next, player you enjoy watching for the next 10, 15 years. And that's cool. Some people do that. Me personally, I'm set with teams, personally. But so I think it's interesting as I think most people, and most people cheer for their hometown teams. Most people. Me, I'm very weird in that I could, pick a state and find a team that I like, because that's just how weird I am. But so it's impossible for us as sports fans to. I'm a Tennessee Titans fan, and does every member on the Tennessee Titans roster ethically, do I agree with what they do? Do I agree with what they've done in the past? Can I 100% cheer for everything they did? No. Like, they drafted a guy, I think it was last year, defensive end. And do I like him from a moral standpoint? Not at all. So it's always interesting as sports fans what you put up with, turn your eyes away from, and say, I'll still root for the team. This guy gets a sack, it makes me think twice. It doesn't make me jump for joy like I would a guy that I know I enjoy as a human being. But at the same time, they're helping my team win, so cool. It's very interesting.
Well, I think one of those examples right there, youngster, is the Milwaukee Brewers and Ryan Braun. I'm a diehard Brewer fan. Love the Brewers.
Right.
Not in love with Ryan Braun, though.
Right.
Certainly not. But the thing is, he's on the team that I cheer for.
Right.
So I'm not going to boo him. But I have not been to a Brewer game since that happened. I will not partake in booing. But if he hits a grand slam, am I going to cheer? No, maybe because the Brewers are winning. But I'm not cheering for Ryan Braun.
Right.
So people can't say, oh, you're hypocritical because you're cheering for the Brewers. And yeah, you know what? Ryan Braun happens to be part of that roster. The Brewers made a decision to keep him as part of that team. Doesn't mean I have to like the guy, but I like the Milwaukee Brewers. So I know where you're going there, youngster, with your Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, it's a very weird line. It's very odd, and it's not just sports. You can love a movie and think it's one of the best movies of all time. And do you think every single actor and actress on there has a perfect pass and you just love them all as human beings and they never made mistakes and they never...
Did I lose you? I think I may have lost the youngster. I heard a little beep. Probably because he's recording from a different area of his home. Hopefully he'll call back in. Where we're going with this, folks, though, like I said, Rick Pitino, the things he did at Louisville, the unethical things, and for those loyal listeners, you know that I used to coach college soccer. And the recruiting trail, there's a lot of unethical things that do go on out there. And the thing is, Rick Pitino crossed the line and got caught. And we'd have to be pulling the wool over our eyes if we thought that, and hey, youngster, you back?
I'm back.
Hey, I was telling the listeners, probably being in a different location of your home, you got booted off.
Maybe.
It's all good.
Maybe. I don't know.
Let me just finish my thought right here, and then I'll let you get back to it. I was talking about Pitino, what he did, and we would be wrong if we didn't think every program was doing something unethical and unmoral and pulling wool over our eyes to kind of turn our head. Because I know what happens. I was in that realm. Again, I was a Division III school, and those rules, there's some gray areas that you can try to push the envelope. Unfortunately, Pitino pushed it a little bit far, got caught. But we would have to be naive to think that every program out there is following the NCAA rule book to a T. Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But again, just where I come from a personal standpoint, it's just that's my stand. He could go out and do great things with Iona. I'm just not going to cheer for Rick Pitino. That's all I got on it. You can finish your thought, and then we can move on.
Very quickly from me, I won't cheer for Rick Pitino either. I won't cheer for people like that in general unless they truly show over the years that they make a turnaround and become, a good human. Like, that's cool. And like you said, Troy, you were brought up, and everyone deserves a second chance. For me personally, maybe I'm just too hard-headed. I don't think everyone deserves a second chance. I think it depends on what you did the first time. That's not to say that you can pick whatever extreme action out of a hat. I won't give a detail, but you can say someone did something, and then it's not impossible for someone to turn around and become a good human being and become a member of society that helps people. I have a hard time looking
Many times that doesn't happen, though, youngster. Many times.
Right.
Many times that doesn't happen.
I just have it's hard for me to look past certain things. Not everything, obviously. But just because you do one bad thing doesn't mean you can't, be a good human being at the end of the day. Certainly, I have not been perfect in my life.
We're going to put a Twitter poll out on this Rick Pitino thing. So if you're listening to the show, find us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. We're going to pin it on our Twitter page. Whether you like the Pitino hire, don't like it, and then you can leave comments below the poll. But we're going to put a Twitter poll out. Youngster, how does that sound? We haven't done one in a while.
Yeah, it sounds good. Polls are always interesting. Interesting how people vote. But yeah, unless you got more on that, we can move on.
Nah, let's move on.
So sticking with college basketball related, the NCAA, it was announced a couple days ago that they were supposed to hand out basically to all, I think it was 330-something D1 programs that participate in college basketball. They were going to distribute $600 million around that amount this year based on revenue, basically, and splitting it between all the D1 teams. And part of that revenue comes from March Madness. Well, as opposed to $600 million being distributed to all those universities, it's cut down to around $225 million. So you're slashing around $375 million going around. So if just equally, and I don't know how this distribution works. I'm sure it's not perfect, 50-50 for everyone, and 50-50 is the wrong term. But you get my point that, Duke gets the same amount from the
equal
NCAA.
Pieces of the pie. Equal pieces of the pie. That's what they're doing.
Right. I don't know if the NCAA, just the NCAA itself, gives Duke a check at the end of the year the same as George Washington University. I don't know. I don't know that. Obviously, Duke makes more because of TV rights and stuff like that, but the NCAA just giving money at the end of the year because of, all the stuff that they get money from, and March Madness obviously a big part. I don't know. But yeah,
well, since we don't really go in depth on our topics, you bring up a good point. Now, when I get home, I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I really want to know now. If anybody's listening in, I'll probably know the answer by the time the show airs, because you know me, when I want to find something, I'll frivolously look for it, and then I'll find it, and maybe I'll actually put it on our page, the true fact of it. My first thought there, my initial thought, Youngster, is that equal pieces of the pie across the board to the 330 whatever schools it is, that to me is unfair. It is unfair. For example, Iona and Duke. Let's put those two up against each other. Enrollment is one of the things, and revenue generating for the NCAA has to be another factor. But I would think the major factor is enrollment, and we'll just use a fictitious number. You look at it, let's say it's 100,000 to every school. Well, Duke getting 100,000, not the same as Iona getting 100,000. That's like hitting the jackpot for Iona. Whereas for Duke, it's like, okay. So, yeah, I would imagine that there's some stipulations. I want to find out now. I'm going to go home and dig my head into the computer while I'm editing the show and find out. Good point. What else you got on that?
I gave you some homework. So, yeah, because of March Madness not happening because of coronavirus, $600 million being distributed, cut down to about $225. So that's
well, and it's an unfortunate event, and it sucks. But, the thing is, we're all dealing with it. Not only the NCAA. I've got businesses out there today, and I'll just use this as an example. I had 15 stops today. 9 out of 15 customers ordered. 6 customers didn't even have to order any beverages, Youngster. I mean, that's pretty sad. They're like, just wait till next order, wait till next week.
Right.
And part of it is because business is down. I'm going into a lot of stores. Sales are down 50%. Sales are down 60%. Sales are down 70%. Yeah. And it's just part of what's going on right now. And out in Pittsburgh, in Allegheny County, where I work, there's a stay-at-home order out. Like 8 o'clock, you have to be in your house. Yeah. And you're only supposed to go out for essentials. And I know there's a lot more counties out there that have stay-at-home orders. But when that happens, it's going to affect business. And so we're talking sports, and we're talking about leagues getting canceled. Well, if you peel back the onion down to your local community, how many of your stores have had to close? And what kind of revenue are they losing? So it's kind of hard for me, youngster, to feel empathetic and say, oh, no, Duke's not going to get their money this year. And I just bring that up because that was the name you brought up. I can't really, with everything else going on in the world, I don't feel bad. Like, it's like, oh, well, we're in a pandemic, and that's just part of the consequence. So you can call me a cold-hearted you-know-what, but I'm not feeling sorry for these schools. I'm really not. I mean, it sucks that there's no tournament and the money's not there, but at some point I am drawing that line between sports and my neighborhood, I guess even affecting where I live. So, again, is it going to affect the product on the field? Could affect resources, could affect scholarships, all kinds of things. And we won't know the true effect probably for at least 2 years. Because of all the monies that are lost.
Right. Just in college football, like spring practices are being slashed. So football teams will not be as crisp going into August, which means going into the college football season, as they usually would. I mean, that's just a fact. That's not to say that Ohio State won't be as great as Ohio State can be, but they're not having spring practices. They're not having a spring game. Or at least.
And who that really hurts, youngster, it hurts the guys that are ready to step up into starting roles or more prominent roles with their teams. And it also hurts the early enrollees, the guys that enrolled in the spring semester.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of high school seniors that are eligible to graduate in the fall after their season, and then they enroll in college for the spring term just so they can get into spring ball. That happens a lot. It happens more than people probably know. And these guys have now not been able to step on the field. And by the time practice rolls around, and it's a great segue into our next topic about what Kirk Herbstreit said, but when practice rolls around, now you've got limited time in the fall for these guys that, man, I wanted to go to school so I could get spring ball under my belt and then compete for a starting job in August. Might not happen now because you have limited time in the offense or defense. Well, what did Kirk have to say, youngster?
Very, very quickly, before Kirk Herbstreit, I wanted to get to this. Daniel Oturu, the big man, 6'11" big man. He was a sophomore from Minnesota this past year. He averaged 20 and 11 quietly. This past season, he elected to go into the 2020 NBA draft. So that's just news to note. A very quality big man.
So I'm going to make it a little longer. I know you said quickly, but keep the Kirk Herbstreit thing on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
But do you blame him for going to the NBA after the way Minnesota ended their season? I don't.
Right.
It's a good move on his part. Is Minnesota going to compete in that Big Ten next year? Probably not.
Right.
They might be a tournament team, but what kind of tournament team? In that very competitive Big Ten, and we'll talk about it as the summer goes along because we don't have a lot of other things to talk about. Well, one of our shows will be who's returning for basketball. And you look at that conference, Kevin, I could see next year the Big Ten being right around 9 or 10 teams again that are going to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. Yeah. There's going to be that much depth in the Big Ten. So if you're him, why hang around? What more do you got to prove? You want to go out and be a 20-point, 10-rebound guy on a team that's maybe, 18 and 12?
Right.
And 9th or 10th place in the Big Ten with no chance to win a national title? Why?
Right.
Go take the Bucks. You're going to get drafted. That's where your scouting report is.
Yeah. That's the thing, too, is ultimately what does he have left to prove? Yeah, he can add more to his three-point game, or yeah, he can become a better interior defender or whatever. But instead of being a sophomore and coming out, the NBA is going to see you and you'll be a junior and you'll be coming out, which hurts your stock. So unless he
and we've talked about this. You've brought it up many times when it's NBA draft time. These teams want young and athletic, and that's what he is.
If you're getting picked in the top 5 to 10, you're a bad team. You're looking to rebuild. You're looking to take an 18, 19-year-old. You're not looking to take Malcolm Brogdon, who's 22 and played 4 years of college basketball. If you're a playoff team and you're a contender and you want to stick Malcolm Brogdon as your starting point guard or key backup point guard, then yeah, you take him and you say, look, we already have a commodity here. There's no 2, 3 years, 4 years of growth.
I will throw this out, youngster. If he was playing on a Michigan State or a Duke, someone like that, then I would say stay for your junior year. Stay and improve your game. But really on a team that's going to be, middle of the pack, maybe an NCAA bubble team, like you said, is he really going to get better? Is he really going to improve his game? I don't think he would. If he was at a bigger program, a more prominent program like a Duke or a Michigan State, I think then you weigh the odds and say, okay, well, I can go now, but I can come back and play with really good players and really develop this part of my game. Whereas when you're at Minnesota and you're the guy, you're going to get fed the ball. You're going to be asked to pretty much do the same thing you did this year, and what are the results going to be? The only thing I would see, this is a great move on his part, because I can't see his stock really going up a whole lot for 1 year, youngster, and you may disagree with me. I think him coming back would only decrease his draft stock. What if he comes out and only averages 15 a game? What if he got hurt? So I think it's a great move.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of negatives that can happen. Even if he upped his averages to 23 and 13, and instead of 2.5 blocks a game, he averages 3, and he builds on his 3-point game, his stock could go up. But the other thing too is, again, you're losing a year. That hurts in NBA's. That matters. And
the NBA also, life cycle.
Yeah, and the other big thing is this draft sucks. There's no sugarcoating it. This draft sucks. So if you're...
What was that, youngster? What is this year's NBA draft?
It sucks.
Say it again.
The draft class sucks. And that's not to say that there can't be, 3 elite prospects and 2 Hall of Fame. I don't know. But from a evaluating standpoint, it's at number 5. You're talking about, hopefully this kid pans out and becomes good. Usually at number 5, they'll be good. It's just a matter of how good. Now, this year at number 5, it's hopefully they turn into something good. Usually you have to wait 10, 15 picks until we see the skill set. Hopefully he turns into a good player.
Every once in a while, though, youngster, there's a team in the top 10 that does one of those international reaches, and we scratch our head and go, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think you're going to see even more. You're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of that this year, in my opinion, as long as there are international prospects that are to be had. That's another thing. But anyway, so that's, if you're eligible to come out and you're averaging 20 and 11 and 2.5 blocks a game, come out, because next year's draft should be better than this one, just based on how poor this one is seeming.
Oh, come on. Don't use the word poor, youngster. You've been using the word sucks for the last minute.
Sorry, sucks. So moving on very quickly, I want to get to these last 2 quick topics here. We don't want to sit here and talk about coronavirus for an hour, but
nope.
NCAA football season.
We brought it up briefly. That's it.
Yes. Kirk Herbstreit said, I think it was earlier today, that he'd be shocked if college football's 2020 season would be played. And again, I'm not going to get into the whole coronavirus thing, but that's a real possibility. We don't know how long this is going to last. It depends on what the experts ultimately say. It'll be interesting to see if things die down a little bit, but they still don't want 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 people in the stands in Columbus, at one time. That could be a thing too. And so college football, the NFL, their seasons might go on. Things may taper off a little bit and settle down a little bit worldwide, or U.S.-wide, especially talking about college football, but that doesn't necessarily mean that fans might be in the stands, or maybe you only fill a tenth of the stadium as opposed to the full thing. I don't know. We have to wait and see. There's nothing to necessarily talk in depth about here. We do want to keep these shows moving, but
there's no black and white. There's no black and white date as to this will be the day that we can start everything over. It's just not there, and the new reports are saying there might be another strand that comes back around in the fall. Like it might circle back and make another run in the fall. So we don't know. Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, just out in Western PA, Kevin, like the number of cases are growing exponentially. And part of it is because we have more tests. They're able to test more people. And maybe that will allow them to come up with some kind of vaccine. And if that happens, then maybe we can get back to some normalcy. But who knows when that vaccine's coming up? Yeah. Things are changing every day. And so, again, we're not going to sit here and talk about Corona. Everybody's talked about it. You guys have your research. We're going to move on. We got one more topic, then we're out of here. Well, we're not out of here. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk with Jennifer Cobb.
There you go. Latest Big Ten 2020 football odds for who's going to win the division. Can you guess who's number one, Troy?
Ohio State.
There you go. So you got that right. Ohio State's minus.
Who's second? Second. Let me say second. Penn State is second.
That's what's interesting. If there's something to take away here, Michigan's second at plus 350, and then third is Wisconsin at plus 900. It jumps 900 for Wisconsin, and then Penn State's fourth at plus 1,000. Penn State offensively, exactly. Penn State offensively is going to be pretty damn good.
I would have Penn State second.
I would agree with you. I wouldn't have Michigan second. That's for sure.
I wouldn't have Wisconsin third.
The only reason I could see Wisconsin...
So I guess the only reason they're up there is because Wisconsin will win their division.
Exactly. That's the thing.
And so they'll be playing in the championship game and have a chance to win that. So I guess that does make sense. And that's probably why the odds jump so high, is because, Wisconsin's really not this good, but they're going to possibly win their division and have a fluke chance to win. That might not be bad, though, to put $10 on a plus 1,000 or plus 950, whatever it is. I might put $10 on that.
There you go. But that was going to be my counter argument, was that is Penn State better than Wisconsin next season? Probably. But Wisconsin also has a much easier road to get to the Big Ten championship game than Penn State does. So therefore, they have a better chance of winning the Big Ten championship game because they are more likely to be in it than Penn State is. So that's why Wisconsin has better.
So when we sit down and here's where you go. You can't take everything at face value when you just look at it and go, what, are you guys nuts? Now that we've talked it through, it makes sense. It makes sense why the odds are where the odds are. All right, what else you got, youngster? Anything? Or are we going to move into a break and then come back and talk to Jennifer Cobb?
We're good to move into a break. Every week we'll find topics to talk about. No sports doesn't matter.
Not as long as usual. Not when sports are going on. Like this show's was 30 minutes? Holy cow! People got to think that you and I are like not doing our job correctly because we usually babble. The show the entire show after we get done talking to Jennifer Cobb will actually be over an hour. But our little sports convo is only 30 minutes. I think we're not doing our job right.
We could go in depth more about Pitino and Oturu and Herbstreit and these odds. I mean, we could sit here for 10 hours, literally, and talk about those 4 or 5 topics.
Hint to a radio station. Hint. We got plenty of time to make up a 4-hour morning show, or a 4-hour afternoon show, or a 4-hour evening show. Heck, the youngster and I will work the graveyard shift. We will. We got plenty to talk about. All right, youngster, let the fans know where they can get in touch with us. We're going to put a Twitter poll out, too, so give them our Twitter stuff.
Especially on Twitter is the place to be for us, following us. On Twitter, at YoungsterOldMan, that's all one word. Youngster, Old Man, all one word. So twitter.com/YoungsterOldMan, that's where you want to be to interact with us, interact with our polls, stuff like that. Find all the shows that Troy and I do. YoungsterOldMan.home.blog is our home site. If you go to thegruelingtruth.com, that also hosts our stuff. That may be where you're listening to this show now. But especially social media, Facebook.com, Twitter.com/YoungsterOldMan is the best place to find us.
Sounds good. And definitely tune in because after the break, we'll be back talking with Jennifer Cobb, who is the founder of the Gateway for a Cure. She's going to talk about the caregivers and Parkinson's disease, so don't miss that. Come back after the break.
Hi, I'm Dr. David Hill with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Kids today are surrounded by screens, starting when they're babies. But children don't need to learn to use technology right away. Toddlers learn best by playing, reading, talking, and singing with their parents. You, not an app, are your child's best teacher. When you are ready to introduce media, choose wisely and set some boundaries. Visit healthychildren.org/media use plan to create your plan.
Welcome back from the break, everybody. It is time to bring on a very special guest, and I know the youngster had to bow out, but that's okay. I'll take it home from here. But it is with great pleasure that we bring Jennifer Cobb on the show today. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today. You've got a great foundation, and like I told you as we were talking before the show, I'm just going to let you talk because I was doing research, and it's awesome. But if you can give yourself just a little bit, our listeners, a little bit of background on how you started the foundation. And then, like I said, I'm going to let you talk. I'll interrupt you like I do the youngster all the time, and he's used to it.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. And, how you guys holding up with the coronavirus out by you guys? I know this is a scary time across the country.
Yes, and it's a very sad time. But again, we work. We're all more powerful as we work together, and I think that's what our country is doing. And we're all quarantined. St. Louis, we're doing great. Everybody's listening to their orders and very respectful and keeping inside. But my foundation, Team Gateway to a Cure, is about 2 years old, and I started it because my father, whose name is Ty Cobb, the baseball player's name, not the same person. My dad was a little nicer than the Ty Cobb baseball player. But,
I'm sure they referenced that many of times, like, oh, your dad is Ty Cobb.
Right, and remind me, I'll give you some trivia on Ty Cobb, which I'm sure your listeners will find fascinating. But in any regard, yes, Team Gateway to a Cure was founded about 2 years ago, and I had worked with Michael J. Fox for many years, the Fox Foundation, after my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's in '99, right around the time when Michael went public with his announcement that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so I collaborated efforts with Michael and raised quite a bit of money for his foundation for research over the last number of years. And he honors me every year in the at the VIP Awards in New York City for my efforts. And after doing that for a number of years, I thought, there had to be a way that I could bring his resources to the city of St. Louis and host a myriad of different fun events to raise more money for research for him. And that's kind of how Team Gateway to a Cure was born. The Fox Foundation actually gave us the name, and we filed a 501c3. I have put together a board of directors and sketched out the logo and sent out a press release to the city. They had a real nice unveiling of the logo and announced the board of directors to everyone, and that's how it was born. And my platform is coming off the NFL field as a NFL alumni, St. Louis Rams Super Bowl cheerleader. And many times you hear of the players.
You had a chance then to cheer for the greatest show on turf, didn't you?
Greatest show on turf, yeah. I was on the field with Warner and Isaac Bruce, who's just gotten indicted into the just Hall of Fame. Now he's a class of 2020, which is pretty cool. And great friend of mine who also has a great foundation, Isaac Bruce Foundation. And so I was part of that era of the greatest show on turf, and I just wanted to use my platform coming off the field to raise awareness for Parkinson's. so over the last couple of years, I've actually collaborated efforts with the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center. Now, Michael raises millions of dollars for research, and we do not have a cure for it, but we do have caregivers, which is part of the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center. They generally focus on caregiver support for all brain diseases, whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, MS, concussions, and Parkinson's, all brain diseases. And one of the greatest honors that I had just recently was meeting with Lonnie Ali, who is Muhammad's widow, and she gave me a tour of the facility. And it's pretty cool to walk around and see how this foundation is set up. It looks like a laboratory of the inside of a home, because caregivers, like myself, I'm an adult child caring for my father. And so I need to be emotionally and physically equipped when I take care of him if he has a fall, if something would happen. So I need to be coached and trained to that perspective. And so it was pretty interesting how that caregiver with the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center, how it solely focuses on the caregiver support. And that is actually one of Muhammad's legacies, which Lonnie actually shared with me, was his legacy he wanted to instill in everyone's heart was the fact that caregiver support continues to carry on. We don't have a cure for Parkinson's, but we still have caregivers in the home and part of the family. And so where do they go for their support? Financially, emotionally, physically. At the end of the day, when every one of us go home and we have a loved one in our family that struggles from a disease, how do you care for them? And so that's where the Champs legacy is focused on, which so I was able to bring their resources to the city of St. Louis and collaborate not only with the Fox Foundation, but also with the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center. And Team Gateway to a Cure.org focuses on caregiver support and what that looks like.
And this is where I'm really intrigued, because your foundation is the word is now off my tongue. Raising money. Jeez, it's been a long day. Raising money to find a cure for Parkinson's. But in the meantime, you're also raising funds to help support the caregivers who, in the meantime, have to donate time, resources to take care of the loved ones. And you don't find a lot of foundations that do both. Usually it's just
and that's really a great point, because where is their 5K? Where is their big fancy auction dinner? You hear of them all for the diseases, whether it's cancer, raising money for juvenile diabetes. Every disease out there has a 5K attached to it. Every disease out there has a fundraiser, but you never hear of a fundraiser for a caregiver. So where do they get their support, not only emotionally and physically, but financially? And so now the insurance companies are recognizing them as a second patient. And so a lot of these hospitals are now putting in programs for caregiver support programs. And the Family Caregiver Act was actually written in law by the president, and he put that in place because he wanted to recognize them and give them financial a kickback for, especially if you're a low-income senior and you're working out of the home and you can't financially support the medicine that your loved one might need, or to get back and forth to the doctor appointments. How do you, if you don't have a car, how do you get, transportation to and from?
Well, I know, Jennifer, a lot of times, and friends of the family that have had to go and try to use outside sources for caregivers. Sometimes I would imagine that a lot of these people that have Parkinson's disease, maybe financially, can't afford to go to a third-party caregiver or somebody that is trained, because they can become costly. And if your insurance isn't going to cover it, you have to then financially foot that bill for one of those type caregivers. So unless I'm understanding wrong, this foundation is giving you resources, giving you training, helping those that maybe can't afford to go to a third party. Because I know a good friend of mine exhausted his savings to have his mother have a caregiver at her house just 3 days a week.
And you know what the foundation focuses on is what that actually looks at in terms of the home dynamic, and how important not only the millennials are, but also my generation as an adult single parent caring for 3 children. And I'm caring not only for my dad, who has the Parkinson's, but I'm also a caregiver to 3 children in my home.
Sure.
So what that looks like. And honestly, between you and I, the millennial generation is extremely caring. They're extremely philanthropical.
Too bad the youngster had to bow out and is not on the show, because he's the millennial group. I'm the old guy of the group. So
they are extremely philanthropical, and they want to be a part, but they just aren't aware. And what their role can be is giving relief to mom or dad, whoever the caregiver is at home, and get in there and take care, give them a day or 2 break, a relief for them physically and emotionally, so they can have some respite time. And, and when I get asked to talk at these caregiver conferences, the number one question in my audience from adult children is the emotional history that is attached to the loved one, in terms of, why do I need to take care of my dad now that he's sick when he never showed up for any of my football games? And now he wants me to take time out of my life and take time away from my children, and he wants me to care for him at home? Why should I care for my mom when she never showed up for any of my ballet dances or my practices? She never supported me, so why should I be there for them? So there's a lot of emotional trauma, emotional history that you bring into that dynamic. And so that's one of the reasons I have found why a lot of family members don't step up. They don't want the job. So how do you meet the person who's struggling with the disease where they're at? How do you let go of emotional history? And one of the things in the support groups that I find with other people is they have a tendency to trauma bond. And so, for instance, my dad, when he's finished working out at the YMCA, what's the first thing he does? He goes and sits at the circle table with all the fellas, and they're sitting there eating their donut and drinking their coffee, and you know what they're talking about. They're trauma bonding. They're talking about their daily experiences and how they get through their day going through whatever they're going through. And they listen to each other more than they do their doctor in a 15-minute conversation in the doctor's office. So what these people can do as caregivers is trauma bond, talk, share their stories. It doesn't have to be fancy. You might meet your dad or your mom where they're at because they're sick. They're not the same person they were 20, 30 years ago. So you got to let that emotional history go, meet them where they're at, sit down, slow down your life, and enjoy who they are right there. Maybe it means do a puzzle. Maybe it means you cook a meal in front of them if they're not capable of it, and show them, give them certain things that they could do, whether it's washing the fruit, cutting up the vegetables, watching you saute, whatever, but plan a meal together. Sit down, watch a movie. If they like to go out and about in the public, take them for a walk around the block and share stories of growing up or things that you've been going through in your life that you don't talk about the disease and what they're going through. Talk about life, and it gives people the opportunity to slow down and just meet people where they're at.
Do you find a lot, Jennifer, in the I'll just say it as the Parkinson world, there's a lot of diagnosed patients that are lacking in that caregiver sense, where there's so many people out there that have this, but there's a lack of caregivers out there for the need to be present. Do you find that often?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, every family has a caregiver, whether they want to step up and do the job or not. And so the emotional history is pretty much 99% of the reason, or maybe it's because they don't live close. But there's a lot of options out there that you can do as a caregiver to give somebody a break. For instance, my parents, my mom is caring for Dad in Hawaii. My dad was a hardworking man and built many of the famous buildings in Chicago as an electrician and in construction. And he built a great electrical company business. And then over the years, he, stockpiled all of his cash and saved. And now he's reaping the benefits from being a smart businessman, retired, and now is enjoying the last years of his life retired in Hawaii, and half of the time of the year and half the times in Chicago. But how does Jennifer care for Dad from a distance in Hawaii, where there's lots of things that you can do? People just don't know. Do they really not know, or just do they really don't care? Because they do. Well, they just don't want to be. They don't want the job. They don't want to take it over.
Well, I think you brought up a good point, Jennifer, that a lot of times there's something from the past that's putting up a wall. I thought you hit it right on the head. Well, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, and I think the way that you passionately described it, it's you're like me, you get a little worked up. It's like that happened how many umpteen years ago? You need to put it in the past and move forward and look at today.
Right, you do, and also your dad and your mom and your loved one is not the same person they were post-disease. And we're not just talking Parkinson's here. We're talking about every disease out there.
Oh, I'll tell you, I'll share a little story. My father passed away last year, and I went up and I talked. And if anybody met my dad, he was a blue collar guy. He's a diesel mechanic, and he never, growing up, there's 3 kids, never said I love you, ever. But he never missed a soccer game. He never missed my sister's dance recital. But if you looked at my dad, he looked like a grumpy old man. But the man had the biggest heart in the world. So it's just when you look at things like that and you move forward, you have to look at it as he gets older. All of a sudden it's like, I'll call him and he's like, I love you. And he changed over time. So I think you make a really good point.
Yes,
because
and my dad
you've got a young adult growing into an old man. I'll use my dad as an example. A working guy, his role was to support his family, do what he had to do. Maybe he had a bad day, maybe he was tired, but as time went on, I mean, he opened up a lot. And it was like 2 different people.
Yes, and he is not the same man. And as they struggle with not only getting older and how the body mechanics change, you don't have the same oomph that you did when you were in your 20s and 30s. I mean, it's just called life. It's just called aging. It's just the way it is. And so you slow down. You're not as vivacious as you were physically, but you also mentally change as a human being, especially if you're diagnosed with a disease. And so the person does change. There is a lot of changing. If you could go back, if you're a millennial, so if you're in your 20s and 30s, and you could go back and talk to that 16 or 15-year-old, you're not the same person you were when you were 15, 16. And so there's life lessons, emotional lessons that you grow from and you evolve. And so that's kind of the same thing with aging, with our aging loved ones. And so the awareness of caregiver support and what that looks like is really what Team Gateway to a Cure is focused on. And yeah, we raise money, and research is great. Michael raises millions of dollars for research, and we're really, really close to a cure. In fact, now we have a pill that we take, and it actually reverses the damage that Parkinson's has done to the brain. And so I'm very, very excited to be a part of this documentary movie, as not only a co-producing it, but also involved in the movie, starring in the movie. A part of the movie is It's a Race for Another Day. It's the name of the movie, and it's going to be released this year, this fall.
Oh, wow.
And basically, A Race for Another Day, the movie is all about the life of Dr. Jerry Medoff. And Dr. Jerry Medoff became world famous 20 years ago. He's an infectious disease doctor, and he became famous when he invented the 20-pill cocktail for HIV. And that was a huge epidemic 20-some years ago. It was a disease that was killing people, kind of what we're going through right now. And it had to stop. And because of his breakthrough, he invented this medication. He was actually a homophobe, and as he cared for these people, it changed his bedside manner. Now, 20 years later, I'm talking to you. If you have the disease, HIV, you take one pill and live a normal life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dr. Jerry Medoff has Parkinson's, and today is taking 20 pills for Parkinson's. So the movie looks at the trajectory of Parkinson's disease and where that disease will be 20 years from now, and to look at the medical breakthrough of what it will be 20 years from now as HIV was 20 years ago.
Wow.
And to be a part of this history in the making is pretty amazing. And to have my dad attached to it, as well as myself as a caregiver, loving my dad through the process, I know that in my lifetime, if I continue to live my life in a healthy way, there will be a pill just like HIV that people with Parkinson's will take. I just know it. But until that time, we're racing for another day. And what does that look like? In the day of a life of a caregiver. And how do you love them every day to give them another life? I'm not going to talk about the days Dad never showed up to any of my gymnastic meets. That's not going to give him another day of hope. What's going to give him another day of hope is to talk about the days of the life of Ty Cobb, the days of the life of what Ty liked to do when he was hunting and fishing, and talk about the stories of Indian tribes that he met along the way. Talk about the fun movies that you guys shared together growing up, the fun games you used to play. Talk about right now what's going in the world, the wisdom that comes out of Ty Cobb's brain, and talks to you about what he sees, how he sees the world today back when he was growing up, and the comparison. Those are the kind of things, the conversations that you need to talk about as a healthy caregiver moving forward.
Sure. So the foundation itself, when you look at it, you form the foundation, and right now at the current state, you said it was two years in the making. Where do you see the foundation? Where do you want to take it? I mean, it sounds like you've done amazing things in 2 years. Where do you want to take this? Where's the tip of the iceberg for you?
Yeah, so with the movie launched this fall, Race for Another Day, that's going to be really huge. And then also I've got a book that I'm starting to put together. And basically it's if you go back in the kindergarten days where everybody would tell a story and you just kind of share your stories, and it's kind of the same way each chapter will be designated to somebody that is in the public eye, and as a caregiver, what their life, how their life changed, and to share their stories that they struggle with, and to trauma bond, just like I gave you the picture, the story of Dad at the YMCA. That's kind of what the stories that we're going to talk about in the book. And it's Parkinson's sons and daughters, the stories of daughters and sons of those that are struggling with Parkinson's as well as other brain diseases. And so myself will have a chapter. Joe Buck, Jack Buck passed away of Parkinson's. Tim Tebow, his dad has Parkinson's. Gretzky's father was diagnosed with Parkinson's a couple years ago. Of course, Mohammed's daughter. She, what did she know about Parkinson's before she found out? And how did it change her life? I mean, these are all the things that, we want to know so we can understand the dynamic of what it's like to be a caregiver, and to help through these stories will give other people hope and comfort, but also give them ideas on how to get through it. Because we're all in this together, just like the virus. We're all quarantined to some capacity, whether it's caring for a loved one or whether it's home dealing with the virus spread. I mean, every one of us are going through the exact same thing. And so what that looks like. And so as I look at the trajectory of Team Gateway to a Cure over the next couple of years, the mission and the objective of us is to get out the awareness and to support other caregivers. And I want each and every one of the listeners, if they are in this situation, to reach out to us on our website. Go to our website. If there's a loved one that you're caring for and you have questions, you want answers, come to the website. We're happy to reach out to every one of them and help at to that capacity.
You're reading my brain. I was just going to tell you, let the listeners know where they can go. And so share that website with everybody out there. And it'll be in all of our posts. But share that website right now because, like you said, there's probably a lot of people, a lot of families out there that are struggling with what you're talking about. And before you give the website, I wanted to just touch on one point. We talk about all these, and I'll say famous people that are coming out diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. But there's a lot of people that are blue-collar workers that are out there. And I think the one thing, you talked about history. I think 20 years ago, like when Michael came out and admitted that that's what he had, I think since then, I think doctors have learned a lot more doing that research to be able to detect it a lot sooner than they could 20 years ago. I think many years ago, people were living with it, not knowing what it was, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And now at least I think they can detect it sooner and trying to get some kind of treatment. Now, granted, like you said, there's no cure for it right now.
No.
But if they can diagnose it sooner than later, at least they know what they're dealing with.
Yeah, and also going back to the caregiver, what their dynamic looks like, loving them as we go through this cure together. And so that's the trauma bonding that we're all going to have to come together and share our stories. I would love, more than anything, for your listeners to go on the website and leave a post sharing their story on how they get through their day, and so what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it as a caregiver, loving their loved one, because the storytelling is so incredibly emotionally healing, but education, learning and understanding what others are going through. It doesn't matter if you're a Tim Tebow or Wayne Gretzky or Ali. It doesn't matter if you're a Jennifer Cobb. I mean, we're all in this together. And so that right there, those stories equal hope. And that's what I want to give out to each and every one of the listeners, everybody that's out there. So
share the website
www.teamgatewaytoacure.org. www.teamgatewaytoacure.org.
Awesome. We'll also put it in the post when we air the show, and I'm going to try to get the Grueling Truth to put it out there too. Like I said.
Yeah, I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. You can reach out, follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting videos, always posting neat stories and follow me. I mean, we're all in this together. So, again, Team Gateway to a Cure on Instagram as well as Facebook.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, Jennifer, I had a great time talking to you. And like when I knew we were going to interview you, of course, I always do research on all my guests, and I literally got lost when I went on the website in a good way. Like I got enthralled, and I kept clicking and scrolling and clicking. I personally don't know anyone with Parkinson's disease, but it's just one of those things. I just went on there, and it's like, wow, this is a great foundation. So for everybody listening in, make sure that you go check out the website. For those of you that are dealing with a loved one that has Parkinson's, if you don't know where to go, you need to reach out to Jennifer. You need to go out there. You need to get in touch. Go out there. Last thing, Jennifer, before I let you go, with any foundation, with any disease, with anything, caregivers, there's money involved. You need to raise money. And I know you guys do a lot of fundraisers. Let the listeners know. I know on the website they can go. What's the next one coming up for you?
Actually, we are not going to be hosting any fundraisers, physical fundraisers here in St. Louis. We are going to be launching the movie toward the end of the year. Our trailer is done. You can watch it on the website, as well as a movie poster. And a movie poster for a movie is kind of like a logo for a company. Once you have that in place, it's ready. It's pretty final. Like, we're excited about it. But if you want to, donate for the cause of the movie, you can, of course, have a donation sent through the website for the foundation.
Perfect.
And the credits of your name in memory of or in a loved one's name will be recognized at the end of the movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jennifer, like I said, this is our Go Big or Go Home show. We're going to have you come back and get on our radio show that we play on Saturday morning. So we'll keep in touch. I'll send you an email and let you know when we can come and record on that. And I know that, being on the field as a former football cheerleader, I'm sure that your sports knowledge is pretty intense. So we'll get you back on, and maybe when free agency is winding down, and get your thoughts on all the free agent signings.
Right, yeah. Curly's off the Ram roster now, and I'm sure you're following a lot of it too. So yeah, definitely have me back on. And again, it's been a joy and so nice to meet you. And I wish you all well, you and all your families, health, and during this difficult, challenging time that we're all going through, you and all your listeners. Thanks so much.
You too, Jennifer. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
That's it,
bye-bye.
folks. That's it, folks, for the show. Go Big or Go Home. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. We will be back at you next week, same place, same time. Have a good day, everyone.